Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? And we are back at it again with another amazing episode as we plan to talk about political solutions without political bias. But today we'll be talking about some recent current events. I think that it's always important to update you. I want to kind of specify this as well, that I will begin doing more local political news as well. So I'll be shaking up. So make sure you guys stay tuned for every episode that we do, every conversation we do. There's a lot that I want to go over that I think it's important to go over. Also, I will begin posting on my YouTube channel again. I think that is also very important in terms of like getting content out and having frequent topical conversations. But with that said, if you guys enjoy, make sure you guys rate the podcast 5 stars, or you can go to my website, check me out, contact me at www.purplepoliticalbreakdown.com. These conversations are important. Now, the news that I want to talk about today is more going to be national. I think this is something, if you're not aware of, I think you need to lock in a little bit. First things first, it happened a while ago, but I'm going to say it right now. The Iranian president was killed by a helicopter crash. Now, the relationship between him, his name is Ibrahim Raisi. I'm just going to call him the Iran president because I don't think I'm going to be able to pronounce that correctly consistently. And the United States was complex and often strained. Before his untimely death in a helicopter crash on May 19th, Raisi was known for his hardline stance, particularly in nuclear negotiations. He sought relief from U.S. sanctions in return for only modest curbs on Iran's nuclear program. Administration continued the path of confrontation toward the U.S. and other adversaries, and notably Israel. And I'm sure you guys heard a lot as of recently in terms of Iran and its dealings with the Israel Palestinian conflict, how they are potentially arming some of our enemies, how they're played into the Houthi attacks as well. Like, we've been having issues with Iran for a while, and it's been that's why something like this is not interesting to see, but something like this really sheds people's sides that they are on, right? Especially if you go through social media. Now, although he is gone, they still have an authority figure in regards to their supreme leader. I definitely can't pronounce his name, so nothing really seems to is going to change. Not like if like the president, passed away or anything on the United States side, but that's something news to pay attention to, of course. Next, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, some things that I want you guys to know. Benny Gantz, a centrist member of Israel's war cabinet, has threatened to resign by June 8th unless a new war plan for Gaza is adopted. His 6-point plan includes freeing hostages, ending Hamas's rule, demilitarizing Gaza, and establishing an international civilian administration. Alongside efforts to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia, Gantz's potential resignation could increase Prime Minister Netanyahu's reliance on far-right allies who oppose ceasefire negotiations and favor occupying Gaza. This is very important to pay attention to, as it seems Israel's actions are being looked at less and less favorably overall, even in their own cabinet, with some of these officials that are more moderate in terms of their thinking, more willing to compromise in terms of the plan, understanding what needs to happen, but also understanding when they're going too far. And these far right Israeli officials, his allies, Netanyahu's, are definitely steering him in the wrong direction. Also, Gantz's ultimatum underscores internal divisions within Israel's leadership amid ongoing conflict with Hamas, which started after the October 7th attack that killed 1,200 Israelis and resulted in 250 hostages being taken. The conflict has led to significant casualties, with over 35,000 Palestinians killed, according to Gaza health officials. U.S. involvement includes in pressure to avoid a ground offensive in Rafah and the withholding of a weapons shipment. However, the Biden administration has informed Congress of its intention to transfer $1 billion in military aid to Israel. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan is engaging in negotiations in Saudi Arabia and Israel, aiming to address the humanitarian crisis and pursue a ceasefire. Netanyahu faces growing pressure both domestically and internationally in terms of what he has been doing. The more this conflict goes on, the worse it will become from Israel. I've been saying this for a while, and especially from my point of view, when I was looking at things pretty objectively, that it seemed like Israel had cause to engage in conflict and get rid of the people who were massacring the Israelis and kidnapping them in the October 7th attacks. I think that Israel was in the right in terms of being furious, but they have definitely seemed to be going farther than any of us expected them to go. This is such an important thing to note because now other entities internationally are getting involved. Matter of fact, there has been war crime warrants for leaders on both sides. In a statement, ICC prosecutor Karim Khan said that there were reasonable grounds to believe that Hamas's Sinwar Mohammed Diab Ibrahim and I can't pronounce his name, but a bunch of Hamas leaders bear criminal responsibility for murder, extermination, and taking hostages, among numerous other crimes since the conflict. There is also reasonable grounds to believe that Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Yoav Gallant, Israel Minister for Defense, are responsible for other crimes against humanity committed on the territory of the state of Palestine. So the ICC has been looking at it and now want to bring out war crime warrants against both leaders, considering how the conflict has been taking place. Like I said, Palestine definitely is not in the right. Hamas is not in the right. And if you think so, I think that is being blissfully ignorant. But recent actions from Israel, especially, has shed Israel in the wrong light as well. The UN also decided to call for a halt in terms of their Rafah push. The United Nations top court that I just mentioned, the International Court of Justice, this is a different one, has ordered Israel to immediately stop its military operations in Rafah, Gaza. The court's ruling emphasizes that Israel's actions could lead to the physical destruction of the Palestinian population in the area. The ICJ highlighted the dire humanitarian situation in Rafah, where an Israeli ground offensive that began on May 7th has displaced around 800,000 Palestinians, despite initial international plea for restraint. The court also mandated the reopening of the Rafah border crossing for humanitarian aid, criticizing the evacuation and living conditions provided by Israel as insufficient. Despite the ICJ's binding decision, enforcement mechanisms are lacking, and Israel officials, including opposition leader Yair Lapid and former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, have condemned the ruling. South Africa initiated the request for ICJ intervention, accusing Israel of actions amounting to genocide. In parallel, the ICC, International Criminal Court, that I was talking about earlier, is pursuing war crimes, like I said. So not only are they pursuing the war crimes that I was talking about, but also they are basically pleading. Can't really demand because they can't do anything physically, but asking very strongly for Israel to stop their push into Rafah. And from what it seems, from what reports I've seen, Netanyahu and Israel don't want to budge. And matter of fact, they're adamant to basically turn their backs on what the UN and even what the United States, who has been the biggest Israel supporter, are saying in regards to what they're doing in Rafah. It's pretty nasty, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't seem like it's getting better. Moving forward, some other news. U.S. and Saudi Arabia progressed towards binational security deal in talks. A senior U.S. official has indicated that a breakthrough diplomatic deal between Washington and Riyadh is almost finalized. Contingent on progress towards a Palestinian state, according to the Financial Times, the U.S. had made substantial advances in negotiations with Saudi Arabia concerning defense cooperation and a civilian nuclear program, with a near final set of bilateral agreements in place. The broader objective is to include Israel in this deal, normalizing its diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. However, this hinges on Israel making concessions towards a credible path for Palestinian statehood. The current crisis in Gaza must ease to create the necessary conditions for this broader agreement. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan recently discussed this vision with both Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, sorry about that. Despite previous momentum towards normalization, the recent conflict in Gaza has paused these plans. And it seems like more and more momentum is getting pushed in terms of establishing a Palestinian state, which is interesting. But Israel does not want to budge. They do not want to heed this negotiation. They do not want to give Hamas. They don't want to give Gaza. They don't want to give any of them their own Palestinian state from what it looks like, from perception of a onlooker such as I. That's what it looks like. And it doesn't bode well. Some other news, the European Union establishing an artificial intelligence act. The proposed legal framework for this act aims to regulate the development and use of artificial intelligence within the European Union. The reason why I want to point this out, because I don't really talk about like other laws across border lines, right? I don't really talk about other countries and what they do for their specific policies. But the reason why I want to put this out is because the precedent of artificial intelligence and being put into law is increasing. And I've talked about it before, how the United States of America is starting to push that envelope as well in terms of regular use, in terms of potential, more specifically, copyright infringement that AI proposes, and potentially national security risks and national security measures of AI being utilized and AI being countered against. So artificial intelligence is becoming intertwined with society more and more and more. So here are some of the things that here are the bullet points. First, one of the framework, one of the key points, I think that's a better terminology, key points in regards to this. First thing is risk-based classification. AI systems will be classified according to their risk level, ranging from an unacceptable risk, which is prohibited, to minimal risk, which is unregulated. Development and use requirement. The Act mandates various requirements for the development and use of AI, focusing on the data quality, transparency, human oversight, and accountability. Ethical and sectoral considerations. It addresses ethical questions and implementation challenges across different sectors, including healthcare, education, finance, and energy. Prohibited practices. Certain use of AI, such as manipulative AI and real-time biometric identification systems in publicly accessible spaces, are banned. Obligations for high-risk AI. Providers of high-risk AI systems have significant obligations, including ensuring data quality and providing technical documentation. Transparency for limited-risk AI. Systems with limited risk must ensure that users are aware they are interacting with AI, such as chatbots and deepfakes. General-purpose AI. Providers of general-purpose AI models must comply with specific requirements, including publishing summaries of training data use. And those seem to be all of them. One thing that I want to point out on my end is the one I really appreciate is the transparency of limited risk AI, because it should be very clear when you're reacting to AI. And a lot of people, due to their experience on being online, can kind of point it out. But the layman person, the person who is not chronically online, won't be able to tell when AI is interacting with them, because it's becoming so hard to tell. I think it's becoming more and more involved. Like I just saw a video of Luka Doncic, and I knew it was AI based on what he was saying, but the voice was actually extremely difficult to tell when you listen to it for the first time, saying, "Oh, is this Luka?" Because the voice sounded pretty clear, and it didn't have that robotic tinge to it. Right. So I think that is a huge thing to put in there, of course. And one thing I will ask is like what they will determine as more high risk AI, low risk AI, threatening AI. Those definitions need to be finalized. And I'm sure the European Union and especially America will find out pretty quickly on what could be dangerous when it comes to utilizing AI. Next, I want to talk about the United States. There has been more student debt relief that has been announced. The White House announced the approval of $7.7 billion in student debt cancellation for 160,500 borrowers, continue its effort to provide relief after the Supreme Court blocked President Joe Biden's broad-based loan forgiveness plan last year. This latest round brings the total student debt erased by the administration of $167 billion for $4.75 million, about 10% of all student loan borrowers. The current round of forgiveness benefits public servants, including teachers and law enforcement officers, and participants in Biden's Save Repayment program, which ties monthly payments to income to prevent interest from accumulating excessively. Specifically, 66,900 borrowers will receive $5.2 billion through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. 54,300 borrowers will have a $613 million forgiveness via the SAVE plan, and 39,200 borrowers will see $1.9 billion forgiven due to adjustments and income-driven repayment plans. So if that applies to you, make sure you guys contact your local, student loan forgiveness plan or whatever that would be for you, because I know a lot of people I think the majority actually kind of like what Biden is doing here. So, I mean, if this helps you vote for Biden, go forward. This is just free information, ladies and gentlemen. And the last thing I want to propose to you is U.S. businesses plot a Biden administration mandatory overtime pay. A couple of businesses that wasn't very clear. I'm sorry. A couple of businesses seem to be pretty upset in terms of Biden administration's plan regarding overtime mandatory pay. So here's kind of the full details. A coalition of U.S. business groups has filed a lawsuit to block a new Biden administration rule extending mandatory overtime pay to 4 million workers. The group argued that the U.S. Department of Labor lacks the authority to implement the rule, which they claim will lead to job cuts and reduced hours for workers. The rule mandates overtime pay for workers earning less than $1,128 per week, around $58,000 annually, who work more than 40 hours a week, up from the current threshold of $35,500 set in 2020. Honestly, I'm not mad at it. But let me read some more details. The lawsuit filed in Sherman, Texas federal court, including plaintiffs such as the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the International Franchise Association, and the National Retail Federation. They contend that the new rule imposed excessive costs on smaller employers and nonprofits, potentially reducing critical services. Previously, a similar rule raising the threshold of $47,000 was blocked by U.S. District Judge Hamas Mazan in 2017. The current case is assigned to U.S. District Judge Sean Jordan, a Trump appointee. The new rule increases the salary threshold to $43,888 on July 1st, 2024, and to $58,656 on January 1st, 2025, with automatic adjustments every 3 years starting in 2027. So, how do we feel about that? Mandatory overtime pay for the threshold of, it seems like, around 58 grand. I mean, if you're working overtime, mandatory overtime pay should be a gimme. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not the whole it's gonna struggle for. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. So that's what I think personally. These are some news, of course, and a question I want to pose for you, potentially a conversation down the line, is: should political news be free? Should you be able to access political news, what is going on politically in your state and internationally and nationally? Well, more so nationally and locally. Should you get that news for free? Let me know your opinions. Appreciate y'all. You have a good one. Take care and peace.